This podcast is brought to you by Ranch Vision, the software ranchers use to boost profits and make better decisions.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rich Brazil. I am the founder of Ranch Vision. This program was designed for producers like you. It's a unique, one-of-a-kind, forward-looking software program that enables you to see the results of your management decisions months and years into the future, from your herd numbers to your replacement costs, break-even values, enterprise efficiency, your profit and loss, your cash flow, and so much more. With this program, you can move forward with confidence into the future. Ranch Vision isn't a historical record-keeping program like all the other programs you might have seen. It looks forward. It is a very challenging, very competitive industry, and every ranch business is unique, has different variables, different opportunities, different constraints. Ranch Vision was designed to take uncertainty out of your future, to enable you to plan to profit. Please go to our website to learn more, www.ranchvision.io. Grazing livestock and just grazing animals in general are a significant part of the planet. That really is the planet.
The average age of the farmer in America is 58 years old. That is not sustainable.
We've been hit with water curtailments. We've been hit with low prices by the conditions, by the rain, by the lamb crop, by the calf crop.
I heard a Native American gentleman say, wilderness, that's an invention of the white man, because we took care of this land.
Sometimes fighting doesn't mean shouting and screaming and pounding your fist. Sometimes it's just putting your boots on and being there for work the next day.
It is, are the American people fit to govern themselves, to rule themselves, to control themselves? I believe they are. My opponents do not. I believe in the right of the people.
There are cowboys still around. You just probably don't see them because we're working all the time.
I'm Keely Brazil Cavallo, and this is America on One.
Guys, welcome back to Ranch Beat. Busy week in cattle news and ag news. So, of course, had to assemble everyone here to talk about all of the big headlines. We wanted to talk about the lactating steers social media viral post that everybody saw and was asking about. But then, of course, President Trump tweeted about increasing beef imports. So we have to talk about that too. So lots to talk about. Thank you guys for being with me. I have Dr. Brazil, my dad, and my sister, Grace.
Hi.
Hello, good to see you guys.
All right, well, let's jump in with the lactating steer story first, since that was what we wanted to talk about. Dad, I know a lot of the people messaged you and asked about it too. Basics, if you weren't online this week and somehow missed this story, there was a 2025 study by Texas A&M that looked at 20,481 finished cattle over 33 feedlots and saw that a really high percentage of steers were lactating. And I'm putting that in scare quotes because when you dig a little deeper in the data, it's not exactly what was happening. But it went viral across social media. People were very concerned about lactating steers, thinking maybe they were going to grow a third eye or have some kind of hormonal imbalance by eating a hamburger. So maybe let's just start with looking at what this study actually was. Can you talk about when you looked into it? What did you find?
Yeah, this kind of highlights the dangers of our new paradigm with social media. A lot of people have big platforms, can say a lot of things. Those things aren't always correct. And some of those things can do a lot of damage, especially like to the industry. If people start thinking that it's bad for my health to eat beef, that can have a big impact on the industry and on hundreds of thousands of producers across the country. So that's a big, big deal. This study was really just a poster contest. So there was a poster contest by some graduate students. They looked at a former study, and the former study was about cattle in feedlots. And they were looking at some, unintended consequences that sometimes you find in feedlots. Sometimes the heifers can be pregnant and they're lactating. Sometimes those steers aren't actually steers. One thing being a vet, you only have to count to two. And if you haven't quite got to two, you're not done yet, right? Maybe some people didn't quite learn that lesson. So they're looking at intact steers, which are basically bulls that have one or more testicles retained. And they were looking at the impact of those animals on carcass quality and how it might impact carcass quality. But really, most of those heifers probably were pregnant. But they also chronicled a large number of steers that were quote unquote lactating. I think it's right to use quotation marks because it's important that we're all talking about the same terms. When I hear lactating, I'm thinking of producing milk like a cow, but I don't think that's exactly what this was. One would have to look at the materials and methods of the study to see what exactly qualified to be counted as a lactating steer. So what's the volume of fluid present? I don't think it was probably very much. And then secondly, what's the composition of that fluid? And when you look at the composition of the fluid, it's very, very different than milk. It's really not milk. There is fluid. It's a very... What's that?
Was it almond milk?
Maybe. That's the question. What exactly was it? What are we talking about? And everybody is kind of jumping to conclusions. Well, maybe it's because in the feedlot they get growth implants that's causing this. Therefore, that might transfer to the meat. Therefore, maybe this is going to impact me. But, really the question is, what exactly are we talking about? These aren't lactating in the normal, typical biological sense. There was some fluid present, but it wasn't really milk. It was a very watery fluid, much less butter fat. There wasn't a lot of lactose. There wasn't a lot of protein. So there was fluid, but we don't even know how much was found in these animals. But they were classified as lactating steers. And so then people run with this, well, if 15 to 19% of the steers in the feedlots are lactating, what's going on there? And maybe that's not really safe for us to eat.
Yeah, Grace, did you see this on social media?
Yes, I did. It was quite a eye-catching headline. I went down like an hour rabbit hole looking at the study and doing other research. So
yeah, it's concerning. I mean, it's
people's imaginations.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, this was presented as a peer-reviewed study, but it was a poster contest by grad students that were looking at something else. And I've seen, I've been at cattlemen conventions, and maybe like on the last day, they'll have students from a beef management program. I mean, at California Cattlemen's, there was UC Davis students there with posters showing some of the research that they were doing. Really interesting. I remember walking around, looking at it, reading it. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning for this Texas A&M, grad students putting together this research. It's not peer reviewed. It's not published. It's just kind of data that they're gathering in their education. And they were looking at something else, and they noticed this quote unquote lactation in steers and feedlots, and published the information, said this should be looked into. And whoever picked this up and published on social media, I don't know who the first person was. But at the very least, it turned into a game of telephone where pretty soon you saw these headlines that were 20% of steers in American feedlots are lactating. What is that doing to your hormone, your endocrine system when you eat beef? What are the effects? Which, I mean, there's valid questions around that. I'm not saying that there's not, but we have to define terms. And what we're actually talking about, it sounds like the study is not nearly as definitive as it was portrayed online.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even a study about that. It was about something very different, about carcass characteristics of lactating heifers and intact steers. Really not what it was portrayed to be, and not what a lot of people thought it might be. Yeah, it's important to look at that. And, it has been looked at quite a bit. Implants are used a lot in feedlots. And, I think it's valid to question that at times. And I think it's valid for people to say, well, I don't want to eat implanted beef. But, not even one of the side effects of implants is lactation in steers. But, most people in the cow-calf industry don't use implants because there can be negative side effects to fertility if you're keeping bulls or keeping heifers. So most people don't use those. They are more commonly used once they get to a terminal feedlot. We don't have a lot of those here, although we do, like I say, we have smaller scale ones. And most of those guys don't implant because most of their consumers are looking for, non-hormone, things like that. And so it's better for a marketing strategy not to use it. But, they are commonly used, and it is something to consider. The thinking is that the estrogen in the implants can induce milk production, and that is potentially true, but There are much greater sources of exogenous, outside of the body estrogen sources than implants. Their feed, clover feed, certain types of clovers, legumes, certain types of alfalfa, even certain types of molds and feed can produce much, much more estrogen than is found in the implants that cattle receive and that we eat, right? If you're eating alfalfa sprouts, you're getting what are called phytoestrogens, plant estrogens. So you have to look at it carefully and not just jump upside down backwards after a headline.
I get where people are concerned because it does seem like we have a lot of endocrine disruptors in our environment in aggregate. Maybe there are some health impacts. To that point, Grace, can you explain to people why hormone implants are even used in feedlots? What is the purpose of them?
Yeah, they increase weight gain and they increase feed efficiency, making those animals be able to gain weight faster and get to finishing weight faster. I was a little surprised to see that 90% of U.S. feedlots use hormone implants. That wasn't something I was aware of before, that it was such a high percentage. And like you're kind of saying, there's maybe some valid concerns with just the number of endocrine disruptors in our environment. People are becoming more aware of that. The FDA obviously has a 0-day withdrawal for these implants in the United States, so they don't see it as a health risk, but the EU does. They won't accept our hormone implanted beef. So maybe there's something there, but obviously, like you're saying, more research needs to be done.
As of now, there's not really much measured, negative effects. But, philosophically, you could think, well, maybe that isn't the best idea. I think freedom is important. People ought to be able to choose their own food sources with information, with knowledge. That's kind of why we partly are behind MCOOL, right? People ought to know whether their meat is coming from this country under our practices, under our standards, under our withdrawals versus overseas where they have different criteria. In the same way, if you don't want to eat implanted beef and you want to buy it from someone who does an implant and maybe isn't going to get the feed efficiency or the rate of gain, that's an option you ought to have. But, and also on some of this, the milks, one of the things that happens when these cattle get fed and these steers get fattened, the excess adipose in the mammary gland can produce fluid. And it's probably more what this was. But again, this doesn't seem like an abnormal thing. It seems like a misunderstood thing.
Are you saying that excessive fat can produce estrogen? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. As they get more fatty, it can produce estrogens. It can produce some mammary change, possibly. So it might be more just that they're fat than implants.
Yeah, right. All that to say, we're kind of conjecturing because this specific new study, this new data, this poster doesn't add much information to what we already know. It's not something to freak out about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is like, oh, that's interesting. Let's look at this to understand it more. But I think it's generally very misunderstood what this is actually showing.
And like we're always saying, find your rancher that's closest to you and buy direct from them. You can know everything that went into that animal. You can know that it wasn't raised on antibiotics, didn't have hormones. So if that's an issue that's important to you, all the more reason to get connected to your local food chain.
I mean, you don't use hormone implants in your beef, right, Grace?
No.
No, don't feed them almond milk or soy milk either.
Plain old grass.
Just plain old grass. Well, that leads us to President Trump's announcement, which is a little bit of a bummer if you just bought cows like some of the people on this call. But President Trump announced that he is planning to import 300,000 metric tons of lean beef trimmings for 90 days, right through the midterms, via an executive order. Within the next 2 weeks, his goal is to sell this imported beef at 25% below current market prices. And he framed this as helping consumers while leaving, quote, space for our great American beef herd to grow again. This has been back and forth for the past year. We've been talking more about beef imports than I ever remember in my lifetime. Do you remember people talking this much about where their beef came from before, Dad?
No, I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of talk about manipulating the market a little bit, which is not a good thing. The free market system works and people need to have confidence in it. Yeah, and that's been part of the problem for a number of years. Our cow inventory has been dropping, but producers have been burned time and time and time again. They have to have confidence if they're going to invest a long-term investment to, keep back heifers, develop them, breed them, produce that calf, and then, 20 months later, that calf becomes beef. So you're talking, 3-year time period, something like that. And people have they've played the Lucy Charlie Brown football game enough times that they're wary of that. I think Secretary Rollins this past week came out and said that the inventory numbers have finally increased. They've finally grown here recently. So people are now, we've had good prices for a while. They're finally confident enough to start investing and not just cashing in their animals, right? You want to buy low, sell high. The prices are high. The impulse is to, hey, just make my money now and sell what I have. But they now are holding back, trying to grow and take advantage of this market long term. And then when something like this happens, it's like, I got burned again. There went the football one more time. It's a bit discouraging. It's a 90-day thing, like you say, kind of a short term. I hope it doesn't prolong it, because this is a fairly significant. It's about 10% of our consumption. So we've increased supply by 10% of our consumption. So that's going to lower consumer prices, but it's going to be a little bit of a kick to producers. The administration has been very, very good for producers. Secretary, the Agriculture Department has been fantastic for producers. We are, in the end, kind of a small part of the voting bloc. There's a lot of interest that they have to consider. So I kind of understand it, but it would be nice to just let the market forces work. As the herd begins to grow, the U.S. Cow herd, then, supply and demand, prices will then come down. But it's kind of more a long-term fix than a short-term fix. It won't happen before the midterms. So I can kind of understand why it's happening, why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, affordability has been the big buzzword for quite a while now. Americans saying that food is too expensive. Eggs have come down, price of eggs have come down, price of a lot of different household goods has come down, beef has stayed high. And that's been a sticking point. There was a Politico article a little while back, I'll link it in the show notes, kind of some administration drama, Secretary Rollins fighting other members of the administration to push President Trump not to have these imports and to protect ranchers and to give them a chance to make some money and to retain heifers and to start rebuilding the herd that has been at these historic 75-year lows. So that was going on behind the scenes. She was getting a lot of pushback from people who said at the end of the day, a lot more people eat beef than grow beef. We have to help the consumer out, especially ahead of the midterms, politically sensitive time. So I imagine that she was only able to push this off for so long. I'm not really surprised this happened. I do think it was sort of inevitable. But Grace, how did you feel when you first saw that? What was your immediate reaction to seeing that tweet this morning?
Bummed. Definitely bummed. Yeah, I was kind of talking with Dad before this call too, of just because it's ground beef, how much will that affect? Like, will that affect more cold bull and cold cow prices? I don't know the answer to that, but maybe it won't have a total widespread effect. I don't know, Dad, if you want to weigh in on that query.
Well,
yes, tell us what's going to happen to our cattle prices.
I'll be the social media expert here on commodity prices. I don't know for sure, but it seems those things will kind of rise and fall together. Kind of a rising tide rises all boats and sinking tide sinks all boats.
Do you think it's the right move? Do you understand where he's coming from? Or do you think, what's kind of your take from a political angle? Take off the cowboy hat for a second.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not qualified for either, really. I'm sure there's lots of pressures, right?
That's not true.
There's lots of pressures from lots of different angles. They're having to do the calculus and try to figure this out. I just think that letting people have confidence in the market is very, very important. So I hope this is a very, very short-term solution. If we want to grow the cattle market and if we want to ultimately bring down domestic beef prices, then we can't be doing this type of thing.
How about you, Grace? What's your political analysis?
Well, it kind of frustrates me because I feel like it points to this broader issue of just being too reactionary. Things that are trending on X are, not necessarily as big of a deal as they might seem. Obviously, the $20 burrito fiasco was trending. And so it's like, okay, we're going to bring food prices down, but is this actually the big issue? You know, you spend a small percentage of your total income on groceries now. I think it's like 5% compared with, you know, in the recent past, you would spend a much more significant amount on groceries. So we say we care about things like national security and food security as national security and supporting our local ranchers, but we don't always act that way. And I'm not saying like blanket statement, like Dad said. I think the administration overall has done a really good job and obviously much, much better than Biden. So just a little frustrated though.
One thing Grace had said before, if this could have been combined with like an MCOOL passage, right?
Yes.
Or something like that,
yeah,
it would have made it much more palatable. Maybe a little frustrating that we're haven't got that passed yet. So
MCOOL is in the Senate Farm Bill text, but the bill itself is stalled. The House version passed in April without MCOOL. So even if the Senate passes this version, there's going to be a conference committee fight. Grace, also, just to your point, I recently looked this up because I was curious. In the late 1920s, 100 years ago, your food cost was 20% of your income. And today it's around 5%, lowest it's ever been in American history, I imagine in human history. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of lose sight of the big picture. I do think that's true. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have better things to do than be on political social media. But for those who don't know, the big tempest in the teapot on X the last couple of weeks has been the price of burritos. Somebody posted that a burrito costs $20. That's unlivable. We cannot function as a society with $20 burritos. When somebody looked into that number, it's like, okay, that's the price of a burrito on DoorDash. So that's the price of a gourmet burrito delivered to your doorstep.
What makes our country great is opportunity, right? Not a guarantee. It's opportunity and responsibility, opportunity to work hard and make something. And what we ought to have is the freedom to get ahead, to try different things, to make things work. Your barrier isn't the $20 burrito, you know, or not a government-run grocery store. Your barriers are really the government preventing you from having opportunity.
Yeah. I don't think it was the founder's vision for the president to have so much accountability to the price of a pound of ground beef at the grocery store. I'm not blaming the current administration for that, or even the last administration. That's kind of a slow trickle of expecting centralized power to solve your problems.
Mm-hmm. Which it never does. You know, it always will fail. Central planning has never, ever worked. It's always a disaster. That's probably what prolonged the Depression, people getting involved in price changes and labor wage guarantees, things like that. Ultimately, the free market really works the best, but it hurts at times. But if you let it go, let it do its thing, it's the most reactive. It gets the quickest correction. So.
Yeah. There's two things that are very safe to say right now. One is everything is too expensive. The other is the American food system is poisoning you. I think both of those statements are overblown, but there's some truth to both of them in different degrees. If we want to fix our food system, if we want to have a more independent agriculture landscape, if we want to encourage young people to get into agriculture as first-gen producers, if we want to keep our farmland protected, if we want to have more food that is grown here in the United States, healthy food, whole food, we have to make the case for why it might be a little bit more expensive. But is that worth it? And can we make a case to the American people that, hey, your food might go up, but here's why it's worth it? I think people are willing to hear that case. I just don't see a lot of people making it because most voices online are following clicks. And it's a lot more popular to say you're a victim. Grace, do you think consumers, honestly, would be willing to hear that case? Prices might be going up, but it's because we are prioritizing domestic producers again.
I think so. I mean, I think the American consumer has shown time and time again that they are willing to pay more if they see the value in it, if they are supporting American producers. I think that's, I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, but I think that's why we keep saying MCOOL is so important. I think just giving consumers that option.
Yeah. And I think maybe also another argument that can be made, or just an explanation of maybe beef prices, is just, we're looking at the impact of an assault on the industry for decades, right? Even the last few years, you think back to the Biden administration, beef are the cause of climate change, and we need to maybe have carbon taxes and grazing permit impacts, just continual assault. And so we've driven out a lot of producers. We have a low cattle inventory, and things are expensive. When you have less supply, things are expensive. So we're trying to turn the ship, and I think recent evidence shows that the ship is turning, but it's going to take a little bit of time. It didn't get to this condition overnight. It's not going to change overnight. So we need to be a little bit patient. We can now see that, hey, things are looking up. Cattle numbers are coming up. What's going to follow is prices start to come down. But let that take its course. But maybe a little more time explaining that to people who are complaining about the price of burritos or price of hamburger. And we are seeing, greatly increased beef consumption. Well, greater demand with constant supply is going to raise prices. So that's part of what's going on, right? People are eating more beef, and therefore the price has gone up because it's valued. So that's a process, and let the market react. Let the cattle numbers adjust to the higher demand, and gradually increase supply, and prices will begin to come back down again. So I understand the administration kind of doing this for political reasons. Maybe I just hope this ends in 90 days. It really needs to end, or else it's going to have long-term impacts.
Yeah, and I'd sure prefer that they were making the case instead of just making the concession. But yeah.
I mean, when I was in college, I remember I could get ground beef, the cheaper one, because I was a poor student, for $4 a pound, and it is higher. So we're not saying that that's a fake. That is a reality.
The average is $6.89 a pound. That's up 57% in 5 years. But
right,
it's worth having a more complicated discussion about all the causes and all the factors impacting it. So I think it's healthy. I think people are interested. They want to know. We've had beef imports and live cattle imports forever. This is not new under Trump by any stretch. He's just talking about it, whereas most administrations do not bring attention to what's going on for ranchers.
Yeah, go cattle.
Yep. Amen. All right. So that's that on the tweet of the day. It'll probably all change by the time I publish this. Another tweet will come, rock everything. But that's kind of where things stand as of today. Let's end on a vet story, on a happy note. Do you have a vet story for us, Dad?
Yeah, I don't know how happy it is, but
great.
I can tell you.
These can really go one of two sharp directions.
There's not a lot of happy vet stories, but there's interesting ones. Well, I was thinking about this story was actually before you guys were born. And this was so Mom was with me. This was, in the early days, this was late 80s, right? And kind of the early days of potbellied pig explosion, where those got popular. And it was kind of my first exposure to it. And I got called to the coast, and I would go there once a week and do calls. And so Mom went with me, and I had a client who called who wanted me to castrate a litter of pigs, right? Okay, I'll do anything people call me to do. Pretty straightforward. Most people don't call for that, but I went, showed up at the address, and I met this lady, and she was very, very nice. And she said, yes, well, I have my pigs, and I was hoping you could do this. And I said, okay, well, where are they? And she said, well, I have them locked in the bedroom.
Where everybody keeps their pigs, obviously.
Yeah. She goes, I have them locked in the bedroom. And that's going to be the safest place. It's nice and clean. And but I don't want to be here. I don't want them to associate me with this process. So I'm going to leave, but you can just go in there and do this. And I'm thinking, she doesn't realize what she's saying, and she doesn't realize what kind of a mess this is going to be. And so I said, well, it's going to really make a mess. And she goes, no. I've already thought about all that. And I've moved everything out of the way. And so that's, I think, the very best place for that to happen. And I interrupted. No. I really, really don't think you understand. This is going to really make a huge, nope. Don't say another word. I've already thought about, and we went round and round, at least like 4 or 5 rounds of this. And finally I'm like, okay, so she drives away and I go to the bedroom and, there's carpet on the floor in this bedroom. There's a mattress is the bed, right? And there's this little herd of pot-bellied pigs in the corner. They're all afraid in the corner. And so I proceed to grab pigs and, castrate them one after the other. And, they're just making laps around the room, running over the bed and around on the walls. And, as more and more pigs get done, there's blood, there's feces, all around the room and a big, nice trail over the bed and on the walls. And I'm just shaking my head thinking, this is absolutely insane, but I couldn't talk her out of it. And so we finished up and, we left and, maybe a month or so later, she had me back and she goes, "Oh my goodness." I did not realize, that was really a mess. That was really, really a mess. I'm like, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Did my best. I really, really tried to talk her out of it, but, anyway.
There's some things that you should really just listen to your vet on. Oh my gosh, that is ridiculous. That poor lady. Yeah, that was such a funny phase. I remember people having pot-bellied pigs for a while. That was like a chic animal to own, which never made total sense to me, I gotta say.
At the end of the day, there's still pigs in the house, right? And yeah, don't cast your pearls before pot-bellied pigs.
That is amazing. No, I think that's a happy story. That's funny. Pigs are all good. They're fine.
They're totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not that day, but, soon thereafter. Yeah.
All right. Anything else to add, Grace? Any final notes?
No, I was just thinking about when you used to help me, Dad, castrate my pigs. And one time you got my finger instead of the pig.
Oh, and you said that.
What? I've never heard this.
You had 9
It was a middle finger and nicked it with the scalpel. It wasn't too bad, but it was obviously bleeding a lot. And I had strength and conditioning for soccer that day or whatever, but you casted my finger so I couldn't bend my hand without flipping everybody off. And I was like, I think I'm just going to call in sick today.
I really blew that up on the podcast.
You guys
pretty sure I'm the only human to get hurt by him. He has a pretty good track record. Most of the time, what's up?
You guys were my assistants, my main workforce.
And you were also the person who usually stitched us up when we got hurt. So you're a great human doctor as well, Dad. Quick news on Ranch Vision. We are launching a 2-week trial. So if you want to try Ranch Vision, if you've always wanted to see it in action, this is your chance. Go sign up for a 2-week trial with Ranch Vision, ranchvision.io. You can join our team every week for a onboarding call, learn about the program, all free of charge, and check it out, see what it's all about. So visit us at ranchvision.io to learn more about that. Ranch Vision, again, is a software that plans the future, helps you predict what's coming for your ranch and make decisions that help you profit no matter what comes your way, no matter what President Trump tweets, you can plan for success. All right, guys, thank you, and I'll see you next time.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Keely.